Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the very first episode of the DFO Fantasy Show for the 2025-26 NHL season. We are back. These are our favorite episodes to do every single year. But if you're new to the show, I am managing fantasy editor of dailyfaceoff.com, Brock Segan, and with me are my two co-hosts, DFO fantasy analysts, Beebs Bondi and Dylan D. Berthium. Beebs, it's been a long summer, but this is truly the best time of the year. It's still kind of golf season. You can still go out and swing them. Football starts tonight. The NHL right around the corner. I mean, it doesn't get any better. How was your summer? Welcome back.
Yeah, I won't lie. I'm very excited because my summers at DFO it mostly include me just putting in a ton of two-way signings into the system, and that just means you write about a bunch of players who will probably never play in the NHL, but it's still exciting to do. But now we get to talk about, I don't want to say the good ones because they're all good, but now we get to talk about the great players, the ones that are fantasy relevant. But yet another fantastic summer. Golf's my absolute face off, and here we are, ready for hockey, ready for October, the greatest month of sports. We get them all, and we get the start of fantasy hockey, which is I think why everyone calls October the best sports month. I'm pretty sure that's it. But D, you've been thriving over there in the big city. How you doing, bud?
Doing good, man. It was a great summer. Took a trip down to Greece in August, and it was fantastic. It was hard coming home, but honestly, I'm not even exaggerating. One of the things that made it easier was looking forward to the sports schedule really kicking into gear in the fall. So ready to go. Excited to talk some fantasy hockey. It's been a minute, but it's lovely to be back on the mic with you fellas.
Beebs went from golf in his face-off to daily face-off. We are so back. So today is our center previews episode. So this is something we do every year. And if you're new to the show, we do center, left wing, right wing, D, and goalie episodes. And what we do is we each rank our top players at the position, and we give you our consensus top 10 at each position. We also give you a value pick, an ADP to avoid, or a bust, or a fade, however you want to classify them at each position, and a breakout at each position. So today you'll get our top 10 centers, our value centers, 3 bust centers, and 3 breakout centers. So lots of information to go into the season with, and these are really our favorite episodes to do every single year, and just so much information packed in a short amount of time. Before we dive right in, just want to let everybody know as well, the Daily Faceoff Draft Kit will be launching this week, most likely tomorrow on Friday, and within it has rankings from myself, Beebs, Dylan, the other DFO fantasy analysts. We've got Matt Larkin and Nick Zeman as well. So we're going to have a consensus top 250. We've got our individual rankings. We've got printable cheat sheets. We've got projections. My projections for over 600 players and goalies. There's a customizable rankings tool. So if you have a league with some funky scoring, you can edit the scoring and get customized rankings for your league. And then starting next week, we're going to just have loads of content. So all of our fantasy analysts, we're going to come out with our sleeper picks, our must draft picks, our breakout picks. We're going to have tons of content for you, and it's just going to be pouring out throughout the month of September. So keep an eye on the 100% free Daily Faceoff Draft Kit. We love to be able to bring you that 100% for free. It's very hard to find anything free these days. Let's get right into our number one center. I think this year, more than any before, there is a little bit of question at the top, but our number one center remains Connor McDavid. Me and Dylan have him at 1. Beebs has him at 2. To me, McDavid and MacKinnon really couldn't be any closer. To me, though, the loss of Mikko Rantanen hurt MacKinnon a bit down the stretch last year. And I think the same concerns can be somewhat applied to McDavid this year, right? You got Zach Hyman expected to miss the start of the season, but might only miss about a month of time. It's a bit murky there, but he'll be back. I just, to me, trust McDavid's floor just a little bit more, and I think we all know that his ceiling is a little bit higher, but man, MacKinnon has definitely been better the last 2 seasons, and to me, you can't really go wrong between the two. Just to give you an idea, this is their averages over 82 games over the last 3 seasons. We'll start with McDavid. 45 goals, 96 assists, 141 points, averaged 54 power play points, and 296 shots on goal. For MacKinnon, 44 goals, so 1 less goal per 82 games, 86 assists, so 10 less assists, so 11 fewer points, also 12 fewer power play points at 42, though still elite, and then just a shade under 100 more shots on goal at 386. So that's the one big differentiator between the two is MacKinnon's shot volume. But McDavid has scored at a very similar clip over the last 3 years, and I think I just trust him a little bit more. But Beebs, you've got MacKinnon ahead of McDavid. I'm going to just assume it's not because you're an Avs fan and you've got a legitimate reason for it.
No, absolutely. This is honestly like choosing between pizza or nachos for dinner. Like you're winning, you're happy either way. You're at the end of the day, you got something great there. And for me, it's just what have you done lately? What have you done in the last 2 years? Obviously, both have been sensational, but MacKinnon has been a little bit better. He has 116 points. He had 116 points in 79 games last year, but in his last 2 regular seasons, he has 83 goals, 256 points. Where McDavid, on the other end of that, has 58 goals and 232 points. So that's just a little bit of a 25 goal difference, a 24 point difference. But the big thing here is the shots on goal. That's kind of why I go in the direction of McDavid. As we mentioned, we're kind of going across all categories here when determining how we choose each player. And for me, MacKinnon is just so elite with his shot totals. In the last 2 seasons, he leads the NHL with 724 shots on goal, which is just absolute bonkers when you think of 2 seasons. That's not 3, that's not 4, that's 2 seasons worth of shots. That's more than most guys get in 5 seasons. And he's doing that. While doing that, there's only 4 players who are within 150 shots of him across those 2 years. So one of them is not McDavid, unfortunately. He's had 459 shots in that time. That's nearly 270 shot difference. So for me, like I said, you're choosing between 2 fantastic players. MacKinnon just gets that extra bump off of the shots on goal. And one thing I've noticed with McDavid, Edmonton knows they're making the playoffs. So does Colorado with MacKinnon. It's okay. Last year, though, we saw them be a little safer, have them miss a few games. And if you're in a fantasy battle and you need your number 1 pick at the end of the day, it appears taking MacKinnon off the ice, the only way you can do it is if Landeskog's returning from a 3-game return and your team's completely out of it. So for the 5-6 games extra you might get from MacKinnon and that we've seen in the last 2 seasons, I think it's worth it at this point when we're literally just picking at the smallest of pieces. So this was tough, but yeah.
In the customizable rankings tool, MacKinnon does project out a little bit better this season, so I don't think it's crazy. Like I actually had MacKinnon ahead today, and then I started statting it out a little bit more, and I just trust McDavid a little bit more. D, do you have anything to add on these two? Again, like Beeb said, you're basically splitting hairs here.
Yeah, to me, it's just, McDavid's a guy who across his full 10-year career averages 42 goals and 125 points per 82 games. So, yeah, I think the floor and the ceiling, as we saw with that 153-point season a few years ago, just that much more attractive. But, I'm happy to have the second pick and just take whoever falls to me. I will say, though, like for a down year last year, McDavid still averaged, would have been at 122 points if he was able to stay healthy. So that's the main thing, right? Can we get a full 82 games out of him? Can we get that shot volume back up to where it was a few seasons ago where he went berserk and scored 64 goals? So that's the kind of upside that I'm chasing. But obviously, they're both phenomenal picks. And I'm almost happy to be at the 2 spot and just take whichever one falls.
Yeah, don't have to make that tough decision. Let's move on to number 3, who we all have Auston Matthews ranked 3rd. He is also the number 3 center coming off the board. So we are right in line with ADP so far. McDavid 1, MacKinnon 2, Matthews 3 in terms of centers. Matthews has actually got an ADP of 8.5 right now, though. And Matthews feels like he's in a tier of his own here, right? He's the clear-cut number 3. Doesn't quite feel like he's got the upside of McDavid and MacKinnon. To me, there's a few question marks too, right? Like last year was not great. 3 years ago, not great. And then now we just have to see how he adjusts to life without Mitch Marner. But right now, he's about the 7th, 8th, 9th player off the board. That feels like really, really good value for a guy that was like maybe a first overall pick a couple of years ago. Like, so to me, I think that he could finish as a top 3 fantasy player. I don't think that is an outlandish statement. And he kind of feels like he's like the last elite player going right now in terms of the early ADP. So he feels like a really good value early on. I like Matthews as number 3. I think he's pretty clear cut as the number 3 here in a tier of his own. But D, you're a resident Maple Leafs fan. What do you think here, Matthews? Do we have bounce back potential? Obviously, he's still elite. What do you think life without Marner looks like?
Yeah, I'm not as worried about the life without Marner. I just think the whole offense is still going to roll through Matthews. It might, hurt the high danger chances slightly, but I think they're going to have to lean on that top line just a little bit more this year as Tavares gets another year older as well. So I would expect to see the ice time actually climb a little bit. But to me, the real thing just comes down to how healthy is he, because he clearly had a nagging injury, seemed like a nagging wrist injury last year. We know that was the case 3 years ago when he managed just 40 goals. The last 2 times we've seen him really manage to keep that wrist healthy over a full 82 games, he's topped 60 goals in both seasons, right? So that's the kind of upside you're chasing. They're always going to be hush-hush with his kind of health status, so that's kind of the tricky part, but I'm happy to take the gamble with where he's going in drafts right now.
Beebs, what about you?
Yeah, I think, like you said, he's so clear ahead of the next person there. I think if you're in a 10-team league, you get him at 9, and then you pick up, I mean, realistically, any other potential 100-point guy, you have a 60-goal scorer potentially and a 100-point player, or one of the top goalies off the board, you're absolutely laughing. I think that Matthews is kind of getting disrespected at that spot. Like you said, one thing that kind of encouraged me last year is it looked like he kind of stepped up his assist game, for what we want to call it, bumped his way to a 50 assist campaign. So if he does get those goals and that wrist is healthy, I'm with D. We won't really know until the year gets going, but I'm with D. If it's not healthy, I'm scared of this, but we have to go in assuming he took every precaution he can and he's coming in healthy. And if that's the case, a 50-50 season or a 55-50, that's fantastic. And that's the type of thing that Leon Draisaitl usually gives us, that makes us talk about him being potentially a first overall pick. So if he gets to that point, which is completely realistic, I think you stole Auston Matthews. We could very much be talking about him yet again back up at the top of the draft next year.
If anybody needs kind of like something to point to and look at in terms of like not worrying about the loss of Mitch Marner, over the last 3 seasons when they were together, they averaged 3.2 expected goals for per 60 at 5v5, and Matthews without Marner actually averaged 3.3 expected goals for per 60. The scoring chances per 60 were almost identical, and then about 1 fewer high danger chance for per 60, as you kind of pointed out, D. So the numbers don't change too drastically with Matthews without Marner. So hopefully, if you do end up with Matthews on your team, nothing really changes all that much. Let's move on to number 4. We start to get a little bit different here. We've got Brayden Point. I've got him at 4. You guys both have him at 5. He comes in at consensus number 4. ADP for overall is the number 6 center for Brayden Point. So really just a guy that just seems to constantly get overlooked in fantasy, never really gets the recognition he deserves. Over the last 3 seasons, he's averaged 46 goals and 89 points per season. During that time, he's 4th in the NHL in goals, 3rd in the NHL in power play goals, 13th in points, and tied for 13th in power play points, but dropping towards the end of the second round with an ADP of 20.5 right now. To me, he might be one of my favorite picks. I'm usually one of the guys that likes to wait on centers and just pick up. There's so much value there late in drafts. But right now, if you miss out on McDavid or miss out on MacKinnon and end up with one of those elite wingers like his line mate Nikita Kucherov or Kirill Kaprizov or David Pastrnak on the wing, you could add another 40 goals and another 90 points with Point in the round right after. So I think he's going in a really nice spot in the draft right now, and I love picking up Brayden Point, I think, in the second round, if you get one of those elite scoring wingers. Like, if you can start with a 50-goal guy and then follow it up with a potential second 50-goal guy, it's hard to beat that start of the draft. So I like Brayden Point where he's going right now. Beebs, how about you?
I will say, despite having him at 5 and the player above him at 4, Brayden Point is incredibly highly ranked on my top 250 here. He's at 15, that goes to show that there's 5 centers kicking into my top 15 there, but that just shows how strong it is. I've been doing just suggesting one player a day on Twitter, and each one is for a different category. And today's was a can't miss pick, and today's was Brayden Point. Just because, like Brock said, it's the consistency. You know what you're getting. So many people tend to go for the sexy pick. They want the guy with that crazy high ceiling, but this is a crazy high floor. And it's very rare to see a crazy high floor like this in the NHL. Like you said, a lock for 40 and 80 plus base if he stays healthy in such a good lineup, such a good power play. I love Brayden Point. And I felt very much like him, and my number 4 pick was how I chose between McDavid and MacKinnon. It was very, very close. You're going to be likely happy either way. But yeah, Point deserves all the recognition he's going to get. And I believe he's currently going about 24th on ADP. As we mentioned, it's early ADP, but if you get him at 24, that means potentially the 3rd round in 10 or 12 team leagues. And at that point, you are laughing. You just snagged an absolute stud, as you should.
Yeah, his ADP moved up a little bit. It's 20.5 right now, but still, end of the second round, Point still stands. I remember last year I posted to the DFO Instagram my projections, and I had Point projected for more goals than MacKinnon, and I caught a lot of flack for it. People are like, how do you have Point for more? Well, he had 10 more goals than Nathan MacKinnon last year, so certainly doable. D, anything to add on Brayden Point here?
No, just that I'm, I think in years past, I've been a little bit weary and just in terms of trusting the goal production, just because of how it comes. He's got such a great shot. But I'm just at the point where I'm just buying in on the outlier shooting percentage here, 18.8 across his career. That's the 20th best mark of all time. And I think what makes it so sustainable is how good he is on the power play and how, reliable that's going to be as long as Kucherov's healthy. He shot 30% on the power play last year, 25% the year before, and 30% the year before that. So as long as that's happening, he's going to consistently bag between 15 to 20 goals on the man advantage, and that even strength production is going to be there as well. And the shooting percentage remains elite at 5v5 as well. But it just gives him that really solid base where I feel comfortable saying that he's probably going to finish the year shooting around 20% again. So if we ever see a big boom in shot volume out of this guy, like he could potentially push 60 goals with, his shots. So that's kind of the type of upside you have. And I'm at the point now where I'm just going to trust the floor that much more.
Yeah, over 20% shooting percentage in 3 consecutive seasons. Over his last 240 regular season games, he's shooting 21.4%. So he just can't stop. The only players with more power play goals than him over the last 3 seasons are Leon Draisaitl and Sam Reinhart. This feels like a tier, right? Like McDavid, MacKinnon, then you got Matthews. Then there's probably a tier of, I think, 3 players here. Brayden Point, and number 5 for us is Jack Eichel. I've got him at 6. I've got him at 5. Beebs, you got him at 4. D, you've got him at 7. Eichel was obviously outstanding last year. D, your bold prediction was that he was going to win the Hart, and he was great last year. And the addition of Mitch Marner this year, I think if they end up being line mates, I think it's pretty likely it could take his game to another level. Last year, prior to the Four Nations face-off, he was on pace for 28 goals and 103 points. After the Four Nations face-off, his assist totals dropped off a little bit, but he scored at a better clip. So this is a guy that could potentially be a 30, 35 goal player, 100-point player this year. And again, with his ADP currently going in the early second round, ADP of 16, he's the type of guy that you could take like Mikko Rantanen at the end of the first round and then snag Jack Eichel right away and have 2 just absolute studs at the forward position. So I really like Eichel again this year. I think that the one reason that I have Point ahead of him is we know for sure Point and Kucherov are together. We don't know if the Marner Eichel thing is going to work right away. So I just think there's a little bit more consistency, a little bit more goal scoring upside with Brayden Point, but I think that Eichel could definitely be a 100-point guy this year. D, what do you think about Jack Eichel? He was a bold prediction for you last year. Any bold predictions for him this year?
I obviously loved him down the stretch last year, and he did end up getting votes for the Hart, or he was a finalist at least, but didn't quite come through, which, they're bold. They're not really supposed to come through, but I felt vindicated in the selection either way. But I got 2 concerns. It's, can he stay healthy, right? I mean, 77 games, you're ecstatic with that for him. Last year is the first time he'd been over 70 games since the 2018-19 season. So to me, that's still a real concern with Eichel. You have to factor it in just a little bit. And I like ignoring the injury risk when it's already baked into the ADP. I don't quite feel that's the case here. The strict center eligibility, and then just the goal scoring upside, right? This is a guy that's only topped 30 goals twice in his career. So the big question is, can Marner unlock that for him, playing with one of the best playmaking wingers in the NHL? Is that going to take his goal scoring to another level, or is it still going to be kind of saddled within that 25 to 30 goal range, maybe 35 in a good year? So that's my main concerns with Eichel. I still think he's a really solid pick, but to me the ADP is just a little bit too rich with those 2 main concerns, and I'd rather go for the elite goal scoring at the top of the draft because it's just that much harder to come by, and as we know, it's that much more valuable both in points and category leagues.
Yeah, as I mentioned, when I was choosing, Eichel is my 4, the one who is 1 point ahead of Point. I totally get where you guys come from. That's kind of where I was coming from. That Eichel is kind of the sexier pick here. You don't really know the ceiling. You don't know where it could go with Marner, and that could backfire and slap you right in the face. And if it does, then you're sitting back and you're like, yeah, Point was the smart play. We knew all along Point was the smart play. So realistically, if it came down to draft day, I don't know which of the 2 I would pull the trigger on. It would definitely depend who I got in the first round. Definitely depend how confident I am. But I love the idea that if, as Dee mentioned, he stays healthy, he ups those doesn't even up those shots. He can keep them around 270, around 250. And you bring in a guy who can up his power play points maybe 5 or 6 more points than before. And I think that takes him to that closer to 100-point range where I'm scared Point can't get there. But at the same time, I'm just the one admitting Point could get 85 for fun. So again, we're pulling hairs here. I think you're pretty well off if you get either of these two guys. But I believe that Point's going to end up dropping deeper. So realistically, you'll get more value for where you get Point at. But we're just comparing here. So I had Eichel ahead of him, just on the odd chance that Jack decides it's time for a century season and he gets 100 points. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, as I mentioned, right, this feels like a tier, right, with Point,
Yeah.
Eichel, and now our number 6, Jack Hughes. I think you'd probably be happy with any three of them there in the second round. I think all three of them could finish with similar production. For Jack Hughes, he is the number 5 center according to ADP, but he's our number 6. I've got him at 6. Beebs has got him at 6. Dylan a little bit higher at 4. Diaz went from being a Hughes hater to just the biggest Hughes truther on this podcast, but it's obviously hard to ignore Hughes' potential upside. He's been on a 39 goal, 98 point pace over the last 3 seasons. The problem is he's missed 25% of the games over the last 2 seasons, and it's hard to be an elite fantasy player when you miss 20 games a season. He's not going to cost you that late first round, early second round pick like he did last year, at least not according to the early ADP. I think his ADP last year was 13. This year it is 20.5, exact same as Brayden Point. So a little bit, easier to take him at the end of the second round than it was to take him at the end of the first round last year with this injury concern. But to me, obviously, there's undeniable upside here in the second round. But guys like Point, I think, just are a little bit safer, come with less risk than Jack Hughes. But the one added bonus with Hughes is he also has left wing eligibility, so that makes him a little bit easier to take. And obviously, D, you said that there's some injury concerns with Jack Eichel. You've got to have similar concerns with Jack Hughes, but you just like the potential upside with him a little bit better.
For sure, and I just think the nature of the injuries Eichel's had is just a little scarier with the back, that it could just potentially derail an entire season. Hughes, it's been unfortunate, but we're talking about a month or 2 at a time at most. And every time he comes back, he just seems to be, back 100% back at his full strength. So I'm hoping we see the shot volume tick back up this year. That'll be the big thing because, he doesn't have the best shot. He's career high in shooting percentage 15.8, career percentage of 11.1%. So, but that one year he touched 15%, he was on pace for almost 50 goals. The following year he's at 12.8, scored 43 in 78 games. So I just love the floor here. Still just 24 years old, if you can believe it. So I just think there's a little bit of untapped potential here. I still don't think we've seen the best that this kid has to offer. I think he's one of the most talented players in the entire league. So you're basically getting a 90-point floor if he can stay healthy. Obviously, that's a big if at this point. 36 goals, somewhere around 55 assists. But yeah, I think there's another level that his game can get to. I think the Devils overall should be a lot more competitive this year. I'm expecting more goals from them as a whole. So I just love the upside here, especially with where he's going towards the end of that second round. And to me, two very similar guys between him and Eichel and in terms of the risks, but I love the goal scoring upside here. And I love the fact that still kind of just edging into the prime of his career. So I will take the upside shot on Hughes. And just hope he can stay healthy because, you're getting a 90-point floor with, I think, potential for a lot more if he can unlock that next level.
Yeah, like I said with Brayden Point, right? Similar ADP at 20.5, and he's a guy that you can pair with Kaprizov or Kucherov, maybe even Leon if he slips a little bit. And if he goes off, you're off to such a good start.
Yeah.
I
have the two of them ranked back to back. Sorry, and I just think it would be a really tough decision on draft day if they're both sitting there. Because I do feel Point's just a bit safer, even with the reliance on the elite shooting percentage, because he does have such a good shot, and he's just been that much more reliable in terms of being healthy and being in the lineup. So would be a real decision to make. But if I was shooting for the moon, I do think Hughes has that ability just to finish as a top 5 player overall in fantasy.
Beebs, any final thoughts on Jack Hughes?
Yeah, no, it's I totally agree. He has that ability, and I even have here, if we can get 82 games out of him, or even 90% of what we got in 22-23, he becomes the 3rd C on this list. So for now, I'll take my risk on Jack, and I'll put Jack Eichel, and then I'll put Jack Hughes at 6, where we have Point in the middle. So that just keeps it safe for everyone. And then, but these are all, as you mentioned, this is a good tier. You're still getting a fantastic center. Also, Jack Hughes, you mentioned it, having that left wing eligibility is fantastic, especially as you're making your early picks. You need to think about how you're going to fill out Tuesday and Thursday lineups when stuff gets heavy. So
yeah,
that's a nice luxury.
The position flexibility definitely helps. Just to recap here really quick before we get to number 7, number 1, Connor McDavid. Number 2, Nathan MacKinnon. That feels like a tier. Auston Matthews in a tier of his own at number 3. And then you got Point, Eichel, and Hughes coming in at 4, 5, 6 in a tier of their own. Then I think there's a bit of a tier drop here as we go from Jack Hughes to our number 7 center, Sidney Crosby. I've got him at 7. Beebs has got him at 7. D's got him at 8. And this also feels like a tier drop according to the ADP, where there's a significant break from the top 6 with Hughes and Point being the last two going at about 20.5, and then you go all the way down to 36.5 to find Sidney Crosby. D, you mentioned it's crazy that Jack Hughes is only 24 years old. Sidney Crosby, meanwhile, entering his age 38 season, but does not seem to be slowing down at all. Could obviously be great value pick here in the late 3rd, early 4th round if he keeps up what he's literally done for the last 3 seasons, where he's averaged 36 goals and 93 points per 82 games. He's been remarkably consistent during that time, literally basically just finishing with 36 goals and 93 points like every single season, just pencil it in. Pittsburgh kind of was in a weird spot this offseason where it sounded like they were going to trade everybody, ended up basically trading nobody. Most of the team is back. At least his line mates from a season ago. Rickard Rakell's still there, hasn't been traded yet. Brian Rust still there, hasn't been traded yet. Getty Malkin's still there. So I don't think there's much of a reason, at least at this point in time, to expect a significant drop off. I think obviously age 38 is a little bit nerve-wracking, but we've seen Alexander Ovechkin continue to go, into his 40s. So I don't think that there's anything here to really be too nervous about with Sidney Crosby, other than the age, right? So we age 40 season here for Ovechkin. It's just unbelievable. What do you guys think, Beebs? We'll start with you. Are you starting to get concerned with Crosby, or is it just kind of baked into his ADP here at 36 overall?
I think it's been baked, it's been marinated, and it is crispy sitting in that ADP, because if we're looking at absolute consistency, this guy's been the definition of it. I mean, as you mentioned, averaging 36 goals and above 90 points. That's the type of stuff we're talking oh, sweet. If, Jack Hughes could get there, that'd be fantastic. Stuff like that. And Crosby's just been doing it year in, year out, while everyone's been sitting there going, well, who the hell is his wingers? That does scare me, though, this year. You mentioned it. He does have back the same cast of characters. That's wicked. That's great. He's going to have them for now. I'm worried if Rickard Rakell, who's in his mid-30s, blocks a shot in game 3. Now you have no one else able to play that wing. You're looking at Ville Koivunen maybe filling in. I don't even think I said that name correctly, and he's in their top 6. Or Anthony Mantha, just guys that scare me quite a bit. And for Sid, as you mentioned, he's 38 years old. He still can drive a line, but how much can you continue to drive the line as you get older? He's going to need players that can help him out there. And I don't think sticking Anthony Mantha on his wing is going to help him defensively, help him offensively. Stuff like that does scare me. So with that said, I think he's in a fair spot. Maybe even you get a steal at ADP there, but it's still Sidney Crosby. He's still an absolute warrior. You could probably put B&D on his wings, and he's going to drop a 70 spot at least in a season. So, but D's also a nasty scorer, so that's probably why. But yeah, it's Crosby. So we shouldn't necessarily doubt what's happening. But if trade deadline comes around and Pittsburgh's in the same spot they were last year, you can guarantee they're going to be moving Rakell. They're going to be moving those guys that were talked about that didn't move, even Malkin, maybe even Sid. But yeah, I think you're going to get him in the spot he should be at. But yeah, he's a safe pick. So
yeah, people have used Pascal Dupuis as a player comp for me in the past, so I do appreciate that, Beebs. But no, it's scary, right? He's 38 years old. I do think the surrounding cast combined with that is what makes it particularly scary, because he needs to be the one driving play. He's got some decent complementary pieces, but they're all getting older as well. So yeah, if he at all loses a step, I think the drop off could hit pretty hard, just because unlike Ovi, who has a lot more help around him, it can just kind of coast and chill in his spot and wait for, the likes of Dylan Strome to open up the space for him and take advantage of it. Just don't think that's really the case with Sid. He needs to be the guy driving the play. I think the power play is going to be more concerning year over year as this team just continues to get older. So it's one of those things where you don't want to be the guy holding him when the shoe finally drops, but based off pure production, like when I was doing the rankings over looking at the last 3 seasons, to me, he's a guy that deserves to be drafted towards the end of the second round. So as much as I don't want to be on Sid at that current ADP, if that holds where he's looking like a late third round pick, I'm sure I'll end up with some shares of him and I'll be a little frightened. But at least, like I said, I think the concerns are well baked into the ADP at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like, it's so hard to bet against him. I've got him ranked at 35th right now. So like right there. And it's just like, it feels somewhat similar to like John Tavares too, right? Like, it's like, when is it going to drop here? And I had a hard time ranking Tavares last year, even more difficult time this year after he had another great season. And Crosby feels somewhat similar.
Well, my thing is, say Crosby gives you a 35-35 season at this point where you draft him. Like, we're pumped for Crosby. You think, yeah, that's excellent. He's got legs. But where you draft him at here, that's a 25-point drop-off. And you're probably going to be pretty upset. And realistically, at age 38, a 35-point, 70-point season is fantastic. So that's what I'm worried about. Like you guys said, if it falls down to that point, you're really not getting the value you paid for. And there's a lot higher ceilings around. And you probably have some pretty decent floors by pick 3.
I think too, one thing you always have to consider, right? We talk about it, strict center. The players going around him right now, just ahead of him, Jason Robertson, Jake Gensel. I think you probably feel a little bit safer there. Obviously, it's the wing eligibility. Then right behind him, Tage Thompson, who's got right wing eligibility, Clayton Keller, Jesper Bratt, guys that have, very similar numbers to Crosby. So he's in a bit of a tricky spot, and I wouldn't be shocked if he drops even lower than 36 as things kind of continue to go this offseason and as he gets kind of maybe towards the middle of the 4th round. But I obviously, with our rankings, all 3 of us feel confident in him being still a solid number 1 fantasy center. If you feel like waiting a little bit on draft day, Crosby should be a good value. Let's get on to number 8 now. We've got Mark Scheifele. He comes in at number 9 for me, number 8 for Beebs, and number 11 for D. Consensus, number 8, but in ADP, he's the number 15 center off the board. So we really like Mark Scheifele this year. And honestly, Scheifele's been routinely one of the best value picks on this podcast for years. His ADP never seems to make much sense. It has moved up 78 spots from last year, just to show how big of a value he was last year. But we still see him as a value this year, even with an ADP of 53.5 and the number 15 center off the board. I think obviously it's fair to point out his 21.7 shooting percentage from last season and be concerned for regression. But similar to a guy like Brayden Point, this is a player that shot over 18% 6 times in 12 full seasons. So over 50% of the time he shoots over 18%. So he's a guy that can maintain a high shooting percentage. I think he's a pretty safe bet for 30 plus goals, 45 plus assists. And to me, I think he's a nice 5th round target as your number. If you don't feel comfortable with Sidney Crosby and 36th, overall, I think Scheifele's a nice fallback a couple rounds later as your number 1 center. If you elect to go with some wingers, some defensemen, maybe even a goalie in the first 4 rounds, I think that you feel pretty good with Scheifele. Beebs, what do you think here about Mark Scheifele? You're the highest of all 3 of us on him.
Yeah, Mark Scheifele's just that warm blanket that is always going to be there, keep you warm, do its thing, and that's why I have him here. It's consistency. It's the floor, as you mentioned. It's the 40 goal input that happens to come around almost every season from him. I think at this point we're getting to the point where we're going to start looking at players that, sure, they might put up close to 100 points, but they're only dropping around 30 and don't even flirt with that 40 goal point. Are in the mid 30s for goals. So for me, Scheifele's just so safe across the categories that you need him in. As you mentioned, he makes a fantastic hole filler on your squad. If you've kind of obligated and gone away from centers at this point, and you need your first center off the board, I know myself, I'd be completely content with a little Mark Scheifele, because that means the rest of your lineup is likely nasty. And after you've heard our other positional previews, you'll know where to go. So that's when you start filling your team with Mark Scheifele. So I like you said, he's been fantastic to us on this podcast, and that's why I had to be fantastic to him on that rating, because he deserves it. He is a consistent dude, that's for sure.
Yeah, totally agree. I think getting this kind of reliable production in the 5th round is just insane value. The assists just give him such a solid floor. He's topped 40 assists in 6 of the last 7 seasons. And then the goal scoring, as you said, Rock, elite shooter, 17.2% career shooting percentage. So you feel really good about that, even without the elite shot volume, that he'll be able to push at least 30 to 35 goals with, as we saw last year, the upside for more. So this is a guy that can, if he stays healthy, like we saw last year, push 90 points. So to get that kind of production profile that late in the draft, he's definitely a guy that you're going to want to target.
Speaking of consistency, our number 9 center is Sebastian Aho. I've got him the highest at 8. Beebs the lowest at 12. D right in the middle at number 10. Aho is just legitimately. Oh, sorry. His ADP is 62.5. He's actually the number 16 center off the board, so we are higher on him than ADP as well. But he is literally just the model of consistency. He's averaged 35 goals and 43 assists over the last 4 seasons, and his numbers seemingly never fluctuate. He rarely misses any time. I think that, there's not really any reason to suggest that changes, but I think that's also a little bit of the problem, right? Like he's a safe pick, but does lack that elite upside. But where he's going in the draft, he is an absolute steal, in my opinion. Like the 16th center off the board makes no sense. I think he's still a number 1 fantasy center. And he is such an ideal target for me. Like
Do you have the names of the centers that are going like just before him? A couple of them just for reference.
So I can pull it up here. So he's going that's okay. So like Scheifele obviously right ahead of him. Connor Bedard, Alexander Barkov, Nick Suzuki, Macklin Celebrini, Robert Thomas, JT Miller, Sidney Crosby, Tim Stutzle. Those are all the guys like immediately ahead of him. So yeah, there's just like, to me, he makes so much sense. Again, we talk about, we preach kind of waiting on centers because it's the deepest position by far. If Scheifele is a great target at 53, 10 picks later, you can get Sebastian Aho. He's just as good, right? I think he's going to put up very similar totals to Mark Scheifele, and he just does it year after year. So to me, again, if you're waiting on centers, I have absolutely no problem picking up Sebastian Aho as my number 1 center. D, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I agree. It's not like the sexy pick. You're not going to be leaving your draft fired up that you got Aho on your team just because, he doesn't seem to have that top tier potential or upside, but I totally agree. It's just a really safe way to balance out your roster. And, year to year, we've kind of fluctuated on him just depending on where he falls in the ADP because, again, almost like a detriment to him. He's just so consistent that when he's kind of years where he's fallen more towards the 2nd or 3rd round, the upside, it just isn't really worth it there. But now with where he's going out, again, getting that kind of floor that late in the draft, just a steal. So, yeah, like I said, not the sexiest pick. You're not going to feel amazing about it, but it's just a really safe way to balance out your roster.
Beebs, any final thoughts on Sebastian Aho?
I just, it's as much as I was excited for Scheifele, it's like you're getting a little bit less version of Scheifele, but same idea. And not to pump back the same points, but you fellas nailed it on that one. Even still, it's funny because I have him as my 12th center. I'm clearly the lowest of all of us, and he's still technically 4 points or 4 positions higher than he is being drafted. So clearly we all like him, even though I am the one who is the lowest on him. So if that's not a push for Sebastian Aho, I don't know what is.
Tim Stutzle comes in as our number 10 center. Beebs and I both have him at 11. D's got him at 9. He is being drafted as the number 8 center. So we're a touch low on Stutzle. We would prefer to wait on guys like Scheifele and Aho at this point. But Tim Stutzle's 39-goal season for 2023 is starting to look like the outlier at this point, although still very early in his career. But he's registered 50-plus assists in 3 consecutive seasons. And honestly, he would be a steal and among the league's best if he ever catches a shooting heater again and racks up 50-plus assists. But to me, the lack of shot volume just really isn't all that appealing. His hit production is really, I think, what drives his ADP up. And I think obviously in banger leagues, he's a strong pick. But I just don't think there's a ton of goal scoring upside here. And he's probably a fade for me in the late 3rd, early 4th. If he drops a little bit, I will be happy to take Stutzle on my team. But I just don't know if we see that elite goal scoring return anytime soon. So, obviously this his production is good, but I just think that there's much better picks. His ADP right now, 36.5. It's not appealing to me. Beebs, you're in the same boat as me here at 11. Do you have any other counterpoints maybe to why you might want to pick Stutzle?
No, he's probably one of those players that people get the most excited about that lets them down, even while playing most of the year in the last couple of years. Just say the reason for other guys ahead of him. I just think that there's a little more upside to some of the other names, but you mentioned it. Stutzle has shown us before he can do it. And if he does it, then I will have a completely different opinion on Stutzle at this point next year. But I'm going to let him go through drafts as well. If he's going that high, I will take a chance on someone a little more secure, a little more maybe similar ceiling with same goal scoring potential. So yeah, not for me. But D, you were the Stutzle guy. I imagine it's because you're such a big Ottawa fan. That's why you put him at 9. Is that why?
Definitely. No, just showing some love to banger leagues. Like, I mean, that kind of value off of this kind of production profile. It's great. The one thing to me that's keeping him from being elite, even just kind of this current build, is the lack of shot volume, just in terms of being a real true 5-category filler. But yeah, like it'll be interesting to see what happens with the shot volume this year, right? Because, we've seen it tail for the last 3 seasons, and typically that's kind of a sign of like an age progression sort of thing, a player aging out of their prime and just not getting those shooting opportunities. We know that's not the case with Stutzle entering his age 24 season, so it seems more almost like a conscious decision, and maybe it's just a factor of playing so much with Tkachuk, and there's only so many shots to go around. So that'll be it, right? I just think he gives you a really safe floor, especially in banger leagues. And then if that shot volume does climb up again, then you have the potential for a guy in those extended formats who could provide the value of a late first-round pick. So to me, it really depends on your format. But I do think, again, there's just some unlocked potential here at just age 24, and it's kind of worth keeping that in mind if you're kind of tied between him and, like a Crosby, and you're looking at, whether or not he could take it to the next level, but also provide value across the board. So yeah, it'll be really kind of the story of the season from a fantasy perspective, I think, is just how much he ends up finding ways to get the puck on goal.
I was going to say the same thing. Playing with Brady Tkachuk half the time doesn't help. It helps you put up points, but an assist, but it's very difficult to get too many shots off with Tkachuk on your wing. Let's recap our top 10, and then we'll go through 11 through 15, just give you the names really quickly. But number 1 was Connor McDavid. Number 2, Nathan MacKinnon. Number 3, Auston Matthews. Number 4, Brayden Point. Number 5, Jack Eichel. Number 6, Jack Hughes. Number 7, Sidney Crosby. Number 8, Mark Scheifele. Number 9, Sebastian Aho. And number 10, Tim Stutzle. Coming at number 11 for us was Macklin Celebrini. I have him just cracking my top 10. Beebs at 9, D a little bit lower at 14. I think he's a really interesting player this year that could obviously really explode, but his ADP right now, we're basically in lockstep with his ADP. It makes me nervous, I'm not going to lie, but he showed tremendous ability in his first year, and I think he's a guy that could really build on it in year 2, but his ADP at 43 right now is definitely a little worrisome. Nick Suzuki comes in at number 12 for us. JT Miller at number 13, Wyatt Johnson number 14, and Alexander Barkov number 15. Actually, I think Barkov and Dylan Larkin were tied for 15. But before we go take a break here, and before we get to our values, ADPs to avoid and breakouts for this season, D, I just wanted you to touch on JT Miller a little bit. You have him by far and away the highest out of all 3 of us. I know he cracked our top 10 last year. Obviously, a guy that you just talked about, Stutzle being a category stuffer. That is what JT Miller does. He bangs, he shoots a lot, he scores a lot. And 35 points in 32 games after the trade last year, obviously shot 23.6%. But, inside your almost your top 5, just shed some light here on JT Miller for us.
Yeah, again, it's just that ability to be just a category stuffer in those extended formats. Obviously, in more straightforward, like points leagues where you're not getting the hit bonus, he's going to fall down the board quite a bit, right? So you just got to keep that in mind, know your formats. But to me, you can pick up a guy like Miller, get a guy that's going to be operating around a point per game and obviously has the potential to touch 100 points like we saw almost twice. Vancouver had 99 one year, 103 the next, but reliably still at a point per game at this point in his career, while also giving you elite hitting numbers so you don't have to worry about rostering a Kiefer Sherwood later in the draft, right? So it's just really, really great value. I think even in banger leagues, his ADP makes a lot of sense right now. He's got quite a steal, and it's not really driving it up as much as we've seen in recent years. So I still like Miller a lot, and obviously I'm a lot cooler on him in more standard, straightforward formats. But just something that you have to consider in getting this kind of elite, reliable production while also getting someone who can pad the hit stats for you is quite rare. So, and I think I reflect that in my ranking of Brady Tkachuk year after year as well. And Miller similar. Maybe a year or 2 from now that's going to change is, the hitting numbers will probably continue to decline a little bit as he gets older in his career, but I still feel good about him being that 5-category guy for this season.
Yeah, was up over 200 hits in 2023 and 24, dropped down to 168 hits last year. So maybe a sign that things are slowing down. He also missed a handful of games last season.
Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.